Ego scendere.
This video is just for entertainment. Ego Ascendier does not give any science-based training advice. We only express our opinions about fitness.
This episode, high bar, early but wink squats and cable rows. But fast, of course, warming up with gentle movements. Squatting requires all of his mobility. Hips and ankle joints are very important. It is also pleasant and fun to move them. Gentle movements could even be performed in its own right. They must not be part of a warming up. But he always perform at least 10 minutes as part of a warming up.
10 minutes. Is that some kind of magic number?
As a matter of fact it is. 9 minutes is too little. Body weight squatting before barbell squatting is a really good idea. When you consider it relaxing to sit in a body weight squat, then you are kind of limber. Also, the shoulders need warming up before squatting.
He seems to be doing movements random at a whim.
That is correct for this part of the warming up. But later on in the workout he follows a premeditated plan that ensures progress. That said, he is not draconic on following his plan. He used to consider his plan holy, and he had to follow it no matter what. But since there is some progression built into the plan, it will eventually lead to some very challenging levels. Entering that realm with a die-hard mindset is not pleasant when you pass 50. It can take weeks, even months to recover from 2 hard sessions. Not only will a bunch of following workouts be suffering from a too hard session, but also life in general between workouts will suffer. Therefore, if he feels that the planned workout will be hard to recover from, he simply adjusts it on the fly, all according to the Goldilocks principle.
Not too little and not too much.
He thinks of excess training, that is training that will be hard to recover from, as garbage training. Switching things up a notch to various moves with an empty barbell. This particular barbell weighs 20 kilograms. Most commercial gyms also have lighter barbells. It's not supposed to be heavy yet. Find a barbell that is heavy enough that you can feel it but not more. In fact, it doesn't have to be a barbell. Dumbbells or kettlebells work just fine.
What is he doing now?
He is practicing the butt wink.
I thought, but winking should be avoided.
That is a truth with modification. He will now start the descent with his back in a ducktail shape and be forced to wink his butt under his pelvis in the deep squat. Now he will try to wink his butt under his pelvis already in the erect position. The butt wink will be completed before the deep squat. Another ducktail descent with forced butt wink. And yet again early butt wink. Forced butt wink in a deep squat under heavy load. Try and avoid it if you find it unpleasant. The EC bar became free, so he switched to movements with the EC bar. The EC bar invites to a slightly different set of movements. The EC bar is lighter and shorter than the regular bar, and it is also wrinkled for different grip angles.
Just stating the obvious.
Humph, you come up with some smart thing to say then.
The EC bar may even be used for ballistic movements.
Just stating the obvious.
It's not that obvious.
Okay, but EC bar ballistics is a topic for another video. We will not show that today.
How often can you train ballistics?
We believe ballistic training can be performed very often. It depends, of course, upon how much ballistic training you perform per workout. Ballistic training has only little eccentric component and is more concentric dominant. Eccentric loading, that is slowly lowering the weight, usually gives more muscle soreness than concentric loading.
Muscle soreness, doesn't that mean muscle growth?
The scholars dispute about it. Anyways, since he passed 50, he started to get muscle soreness from all kinds of activities. And from what it seems, no accompanying muscle growth.
But diet and rest must also be dialed in for muscle growth, right?
That is what the scholars say unanimously. So, he decided it just gets too much. He doesn't bother about diet, and he takes what rest he can get. And exercise just for a pleasant and fun time. Should some accidental muscle growth occur, it is of course welcome. Muscle soreness is interesting in the sense that it highlights which muscles have been trained. And a very mild degree of muscle soreness actually may feel pleasing. He tries to avoid crippling lingering muscle soreness, been there done that, had enough.
But I guess that is a truth with modification.
Indeed it is, just these side splits could give some high degree of muscle soreness. He needs to soften up before going into deep splits. The EC bar helps to press him into position.
Oh, that looks straining.
It is a great way to soften up the ankle joints, with the caveat that it results in some muscle soreness on the inside of the thighs. Back to high bar early but wink squats again. He will ramp up the weight and perform 2 times to at 80% of his 1 RM.
Can't he skip the ramping up and go directly to the heavy lifts? That would shorten the workout and maybe save him from garbage training.
How much ramping up that has to be performed and at which point the ramping up turns into garbage training is debatable. The ramping up gives a way to interrupt the training at a level where a failure will not be catastrophic if something for some reason is off. The scholars also say that synovial joint fluid is secreted, which helps to lubricate the joints.
It makes sense to lubricate the joints before heavy lifting and not during heavy lifting.
The scholars also say that the nervous system gets fired up as the load increases.
So you actually get stronger as you ramp up the weights. How far can this be taken? Obviously, infinite strength cannot be obtained by just ramping up the weight.
No, there will be a point where the lift will feel very challenging, and it will be hard to execute the lift with the desired movement pattern.
So that is the maximum weight you could lift that day.
You would think, but if you perform some lifts at this level, strength might increase yet a little. Eventually, fatigue will take its toll, and you should stop the exercise to avoid excessive muscle soreness.
If you look closely, you can still see some butt wink in the descent to the deep squat.
Indeed, however, it doesn't look that bad that it looks in his low bar squats. It is easier to perform the early butt wink with the high bar position than the low bar position. We deem this to be due to the more forward lean that the low bar squat enforces.
Why is there a more forward lean in the low bar squat?
It is partially an issue of balance. The pressure should be about equally distributed over the feet. That is accomplished by balancing the bar using the torso angle. But it is partially also due to prevent the bar from rolling off the back. In the high bar position, the bar can rest on a shelf created by the traps and the shoulders. This shelf will keep the bar from falling down even if the torso is nearly vertical. But with the low bar squat, the forward lean creates a slant plane on which the bar either wants to glide or roll on. And you have to keep it in place using your arms. So it depends on your arm strength how upright you can be in the low bar squat.
This is his second and final heavy set of squats for today. After this, he will proceed with the challenging set of 20 repetitions on a medium heavy weight. Where is the line drawn between heavy and medium heavy, and why is there such a line drawn?
The scholars talk about rep ranges expected to stimulate mainly either strength adaptation, hypertrophy, or endurance. A rep range is the maximum number of repetitions you could perform with a given weight with no rest in between the repetitions. such as the 1 RM, which is a weight you could lift maximally one time without resting.
So, now he is lifting 60 kilograms for 20 repetitions. Is this his 20 RM then?
No, he has chosen a weight slightly less than his 20 RM to be able to focus on his early butt wink.
The 2 reppers he did before, were they at his 2 RM?
No, they were not. They were around his 8 RM.
Squat for 20 repetitions, is that the famous Widowmaker?
It's not a Widowmaker just because you squat 20 times. For it to be a Widowmaker, you should use a weight in the range of your 10 to 12 RM. When you perform a Widowmaker and reach the number of reps where you can't go on anymore, then, instead of unracking the weight, you stand in the lockout and breath until you can perform yet another rep. This form of self-imposed torture goes on until the grand total of 20 reps have been completed. A workout containing a Widowmaker usually only consists of the Widowmaker and some warming up. He tried it a while ago and it was fun.
So you mustn't always go to failure, that is performing all 8 repetitions when you use your 8 RM.
No, strength builds slowly over time even if you use less repetitions than you could. But you should probably use a weight above your 8 RM to build strength, unless you are a beginner.
What if I am a beginner?
Then anything you do will build strength, hypertrophy, and endurance. For the beginner, the body very quickly adapts in contrast to the more experienced athlete. That is a reason why many athletes are perpetually on the lookout for novel stimulus.
Do you think that it works? I mean perpetually finding novel stimulus for massive gains?
I don't think it is a very efficient approach for hypertrophy, at least. For sure, you will be better off compared to doing nothing. So if perpetually novel stimulus is your thing, you should stick with it. If you want to grow in strength or size, we believe that progressive overload is the fastest natural route you can find.
So for strength, use a load at or higher than your 8 RM and you don't have to go to failure. Could you use loads all the way up to your 1 RM to build strength?
We don't believe that using the 1 RM is a good way to train strength. You can't practice many times per workout with your 1 RM. Also, since you will be very close to failure, after all, your 1 RM is failure per definition at rep number 2. Moreover, since the load is very heavy, the consequences of a failure will be more severe than a failure at the 20 RM. Hence, the risk to reward using your 1 RM to build strength is poor. We may just assume that the risk to reward to use the 2 RM to build strength is just slightly better than using the 1 RM. Therefore, we think that working with weights between your 8 RM and your 3 RM works fine to build strength. You can, but you don't have to, go to failure to build strength. If you choose to go to failure, then count on much longer recovery time.
Is there ever a time and place for the 1 RM?
If you want to demonstrate your strength, say at a competition, or just for fun, or just to generate views and likes on a YouTube video, that are the times to use the 1 RM, and it is for demonstrating and not training strength.
Which are the rep ranges that are best for hypertrophy?
We believe that weights less than your 8 RM are better for hypertrophy than weights at or above your 8 RM.
Is it required to go to failure for hypertrophy?
We believe going to failure provides a powerful stimulant for hypertrophy. But muscle growth might have been stimulated even if the sets have not been taken to failure. There is a mental aspect to going to failure, besides the recovery aspect we already mentioned. By going to failure and beyond, drop sets, cheat reps, etc., you learn to push yourself. If you haven't dialed in rest and nutrition, going to failure is just for fun and the mental aspect, not for muscle growth. We also believe that going to failure is not required for endurance gains. However, if you take your 20 RM and make your 21 arm, you know that your endurance increased by 1 rep. That way taking sets to failure makes it easy to gauge endurance gains.
Which of endurance, strength, and hypertrophy gains has the greatest carryover to health?
The scholars debate about it. Our model in this video tries to pick the low-hanging fruits in all training modalities. But if specialization is your thing, power to you. You don't have to feel that you have to pick low-hanging fruits if you don't want to. Just because a weirdo on YouTube picks low-hanging fruits, it doesn't mean you have to.
This last exercise, what is that?
It's called cable rows. He does it once per 4 weeks.
Where does it hit?
With heavy weight and narrow grip, it mainly hits the lats. Remember though, to brace your abdominal muscles in order to protect your lower back.
What about a wider grip and lighter load?
Then it becomes more akin to a face pull. It will not hit the lats very well, even though it is also an awesome exercise, but for other merits.
Don't they say to become wide you have to train wide?
Whoever said that?
Well, now I can only remember one dude that said that.
That must have been a bad and horrible person.
Wouldn't it be nice to do some pull-ups?
He wants to, but his elbows can become cranky. Therefore, more rows and less pull-ups.